The Galactic Military Academy's final integration exercise had a reputation. 3 species had petitioned to have it declared a war crime. 5 more had formal complaints filed with the Interstellar Ethics Committee. And every single graduating class swore they'd never willingly step foot in that facility again. Marcus Webb was eating a sandwich. "You understand what you're volunteering for, human?" Commander Vrel's mandibles clicked with what Marcus had learned to recognize as profound skepticism. The insectoid instructor loomed over the bench where Marcus sat, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh fluorescent lights of the prep area. 72 hours, progressive environmental stress, graduated gravitational loading, psychological endurance metrics. This is not your species' typical, what do you call it? Team building exercise. "It sounds fun," Marcus said through a mouthful of turkey and cheese. He'd made the sandwich himself that morning with Earth-imported ingredients that cost him half a month's stipend. If he was going to suffer, he'd suffer on a full stomach. Beside him, Cora's scales rippled with chromatic disdain. The Saurian cadet had made no secret of her opinion regarding humanity's recent admission to the Academy. "Fun! The human thinks Hell Week is fun!" Her elongated snout turned toward Marcus, nictitating membranes flicking across yellow eyes. "Your species has been in the galactic community for what, 5 standard cycles? And you think you understand what this exercise demands?" "I mean, I read the briefing." Marcus crumpled up his sandwich wrapper and tossed it toward a waste receptacle. It bounced off the rim. "High gravity, hostile environment simulation, team cohesion under stress, pretty standard stuff." The small, furred form of Pip materialized at Marcus's elbow, whiskers twitching with barely contained anxiety. The Chitric cadet barely came up to Marcus's hip. His species evolved from something analogous to Earth is rodents if rodents had developed opposable thumbs and a terrified disposition. "Standard. Marcus, last year 3 cadets had to be medically withdrawn. 2 more resigned from the Academy entirely. 1 species filed a formal complaint that the exercise violated 17 interstellar regulations regarding cruel and unusual training methods." "And they still run it?" Marcus asked. "Tradition," Vrel said, her tone suggesting the conversation was over. "The exercise separates those with the fortitude for military service from those who merely wish to play at it. It reveals true character under pressure." Her multifaceted eyes fixed on Marcus with unsettling intensity. "We shall see what character your species possesses, human." The prep area buzzed with nervous energy. 47 cadets from 23 species, all waiting for their names to be called for the final exercise. Some were performing elaborate stretching routines. Others, engaged in what Marcus assumed were prayer rituals or meditative practices. A few were openly weeping. Marcus checked his bootlaces. "You're not nervous at all, are you?" Pip's voice climbed an octave. "How are you not nervous? I'm nervous enough for both of us. Maybe all of us. Is this a human thing? Is suppressing mortal terror a human survival mechanism?" "I'm from Colorado," Marcus said, as if that explained everything. When Pip's confusion only intensified, he elaborated. "High altitude, lots of mountains, thin air. My family's idea of bonding was hiking 14ers before breakfast. This is just controlled exercise, right? In a facility with medical staff and safety protocols?" "The safety protocols," Cora interjected, "exist because cadets regularly exceed their physiological limits. The medical staff exists because injury is not a possibility, but a statistical certainty." She leaned closer, her breath smelling of the sulfurous compounds her species required for proper digestion. "I've trained my entire life for this. My clutchmates back home expect nothing less than perfect marks. I will not have some soft-skinned mammal's weakness reflecting poorly on my performance." Cool, Marcus said agreeably. "I'll try not to die on you." "Your confidence is either admirable or delusional." Cora's tail lashed. "I haven't decided which." Commander Vrel's voice cut through the ambient noise like a blade. "Attention. Exercise Group 7, proceed to Training Field Gamma 9. You have 5 minutes to reach your starting positions." The scramble was immediate and chaotic. Marcus stood, stretched his back with an audible pop that made Pip flinch, and headed toward the massive reinforced doors that led to the training field. Around him, Aliens of every description rushed to gather their equipment. Breathing apparatus, gravity support harnesses, emergency beacon transmitters, nutrient supplement packs. Marcus had his water bottle and the Academy-issued uniform. He'd considered bringing a book, but decided that might be showing off. The training field was a marvel of engineering. A space the size of several football fields, enclosed in a dome of force-shielded alloy, capable of withstanding direct orbital bombardment. The floor was a sophisticated lattice of gravitational generators, atmospheric processors, and holographic projection systems. It could simulate the environment of any known world in the galaxy, from the crushing depths of Aqueous 6 to the thin, frozen wastes of Terminus Station. Today, it looked like a plain metal floor. That wouldn't last. Marcus noticed something odd as he took his position in the designated staging area. The floor near his feet had a hairline fracture running through it, barely visible unless you were looking directly at it. Probably nothing. The facility was old, after all. Some wear and tear was expected. "All cadets, assume ready positions!" Frel's voice boomed from speakers embedded in the walls. She stood in an observation gallery high above, surrounded by other instructors and what looked like medical personnel. "The exercise will commence in 30 seconds. I remind you that voluntary withdrawal is permitted at any time, though it will result in an automatic failure and removal from the advanced training program." "Anyone else feel like that last bit was directed at someone specific?" Marcus asked Pip, who had somehow ended up standing right next to him, despite being assigned to a different section. "Shut up, human!" Cora hissed from Marcus's other side. "I'm visualizing success." "Cool. I'm visualizing tacos." "What's a taco?" "I'll tell you after we survive." The countdown began. Marcus rolled his shoulders and bounced slightly on the balls of his feet. Just another day. Just another challenge. He'd survived worse back on Earth, probably. There was that time he'd hiked back to base camp after twisting his ankle at 13,000 feet. Or the semester he'd worked double shifts at the warehouse while finishing his academy application. Or literally any family dinner during the holidays. Yeah, this would be fine. The gravitational generators hummed to life, and Marcus felt reality get heavier. The transition to 2G was immediate and unmerciful. Around Marcus, the response was varied and universally unpleasant. Pip collapsed like someone had cut his strings, his small body impacting the floor with a squeak of dismay. Cora's legs buckled before her exoskeleton's support systems engaged with a mechanical whir, stabilizing her in a wide-legged stance that looked deeply uncomfortable. A Volantian cadet, 3 positions down, simply pancaked, their gas-filled bladder bodies spreading across the floor like sentient pudding. Marcus felt heavier, like he'd put on a weighted vest, the kind his high school gym teacher used to make them wear for character building, before the school board decided it was probably lawsuit territory. He did a quick inventory. Breathing, fine, just required more diaphragm engagement. Movement, sluggish but functional. Overall assessment, annoying but manageable. He walked over to where Pip was sprawled and offered a hand. "Up you go, buddy." Pip stared at the offered hand like it was a hallucination. You're moving. You're walking. How are you walking?" "One foot in front of the other?" Marcus hauled Pip upright, steadying the small alien as he wobbled. "Just lean into it. Engage your core." "I don't know what that means. Which part is the core? Is it important? Am I dying?" "You're not dying," Marcus assured him, though several other cadets appeared to be having existential crises of similar magnitude. "Your body just isn't used to this. Try breathing steadily. In through your nose, out through your—" He paused. "Do you have a nose?" "This is nose!" Pip pointed frantically at his twitching snout. "Okay, so yes, breathe through that." From the observation gallery, Marcus could hear what sounded like an argument. Multiple voices, raised in disbelief, Vrel's distinctive clicking cutting through them. The words weren't quite clear, but the tone was universal, confusion mixed with professional annoyance. Cora had managed to stabilize herself enough to speak, though each word sounded like it cost her. "Human, Webb, how are you doing that?" "Doing what?" "Standing upright like it's nothing." Marcus looked around the training field properly for the first time. It was, admittedly, not great. About half the cadets were down. Another quarter were standing but clearly using every ounce of strength just to remain vertical. The final quarter had activated various support systems: mechanical braces, gravitational counterfield generators, emergency medical alerts that filled the air with electronic chirping. And then there was Marcus, standing in a loose, ready stance, one hand steadying Pip, looking for all the world like he was waiting for a bus. "Earth's gravity is 1G, right?" Cora demanded. "This is twice that, double, 2 times the amount. That should be crippling." "Oh, well, Earth's gravity varies depending on where you are," Marcus explained, genuinely trying to be helpful. "Sea level is standard, but I grew up at elevation. Plus, I did track and wrestling in school, and there was this summer job where I hauled concrete for construction, and honestly, my mom's fitness regimen was probably illegal by most species' standards." "Your mother trained you for this?" Pip squeaked. "She trained me to not be a disappointment, which I think is different but related." The intercom crackled. Vrel's voice tight with something that might have been anger or might have been morbid fascination. "Cadets who are still standing, you will now commence basic calisthenics, jumping jacks. 50 repetitions. Begin." The groans were multilingual and heartfelt. Marcus started jumping. This was considerably more difficult at 2G. Each impact sent a judder through his joints, and his arms felt like they'd been filled with lead. But difficult wasn't impossible. It just meant engaging muscles he usually took for granted. Around him, the attempts at calisthenics ranged from valiant but futile to please someone call medical. Pip gave up after 3 jumps and sat down heavily, wheezing. Cora managed 15 before her support harness started emitting warning beeps. A Thexian cadet got to 22 before their carapace cracked audibly. Marcus finished all 50 and barely resisted the urge to ask if they were supposed to do another set. "This is impossible," Cora gasped. "You shouldn't be able to do this. The physiological strain alone should—" "Humans are kind of built weird," Marcus admitted, bouncing on his toes to keep his blood flowing. "I looked it up when I applied to the academy. Turns out we're persistence hunters from a high-gravity, high-oxygen world with way more hostile fauna than most places. Our bones are dense, our muscles are overbuilt for our size, and our cardiovascular system is basically designed for running down prey until it dies of exhaustion." "That's horrifying," Pip whimpered. "Yeah, Earth's kind of a nightmare planet. We have weather systems that could kill you, and animals that absolutely will kill you, and plants that want to kill you, and we just live there. We evolved there. It's home." From the observation gallery, Marcus could now see money changing hands. Actual physical currency, credit chips, what looked like a bag of Vrelian spice crystals. The instructors were betting. He was absolutely certain they'd been betting on him to fail first. The intercom crackled again. Vrel's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "Gravity increasing to 2.5G. All cadets, brace for transition." "Oh, she's mad," Marcus observed. "Mad?" Pip's eyes went dinner plate wide. "Why would she be mad? What did we do?" "I think I'm not suffering enough for her satisfaction." The gravity increased, and reality got substantially worse for everyone. 3 more cadets went down immediately. Support harnesses began failing with alarming regularity. Emergency medical drones descended from the ceiling, scanning for critical injuries. Marcus dropped to a knee, the sudden increase definitely making itself known. His spine compressed, his organs felt like they'd all decided to become one unified mass, and his vision tunneled briefly as his heart worked to figure out how to pump blood against increased resistance. Then, his body adapted. Sort of. It was like being at the gym on a day when you'd already worked out that morning and were pushing through anyway. Unpleasant, sure. Potentially unwise, but doable. He started doing push-ups. "Why?" Cora hissed from her position on the floor, having finally been forced fully down. "Why are you like this?" "Character building!" Marcus grunted between repetitions. His arms were screaming, his core felt like it was on fire, and he was pretty sure he'd be sore for a week. But he could do this. He'd done worse. He hadn't done worse. This was objectively terrible, but admitting that felt like losing. Pip had given up on standing entirely, and had instead crawled over to Marcus, wedging himself against Marcus's side like a furry, terrified barnacle. "If I stay near the human, maybe I'll survive." "That's actually not bad reasoning," Marcus wheezed. Around them, the training field itself was starting to show signs of strain. The hairline fracture Marcus had noticed earlier had widened. Other cracks were appearing in the metallic surface, spreading in web-like patterns from points where the gravitational stress was most concentrated. Small metallic groans echoed through the dome as support structures adjusted to the increased load. Nobody in the observation gallery seemed concerned about this. They were too busy arguing about the betting pool. Marcus finished his push-ups and helped Pip into a sitting position against his back. The small alien weighed considerably more than he should at 2.5 g, but having something to support gave Marcus a weird sense of purpose. "Okay," Marcus announced to nobody in particular. "Is the rest of the exercise going to be gravity stuff, or do we get variety? Because I should pace myself if this is it." From the observation gallery, through the speakers, Commander Vrel's voice carried a tone that Marcus would later describe as vindictive determination. "Let us truly test the human's endurance. Gravity increasing to 3 g. All emergency protocols standing by." Cora, from her position on the floor, managed to lift her head just enough to make eye contact with Marcus. "When I die, know that I blame you specifically." "That's fair," Marcus said, and braced himself as reality prepared to get very, very heavy. The universe became lead. Marcus felt the transition to 3 g not as a gradual increase, but as a sudden betrayal by physics itself. His knees buckled, his spine compressed with a vertebral crack that sounded far worse than it felt. His lungs forgot briefly how to expand against his ribcage. Every cell in his body screamed a unified message: get down. He didn't get down. His legs shook. His vision grayed at the edges. Somewhere in his inner ear, his balance system filed a formal complaint with his brain. But Marcus had been raised by a woman who thought, "I'm tired," was an excuse only slightly more valid than, "I'm on fire." And he'd survived 4 years at the academy, being the weird death-worlder that everyone expected to fail. He'd be damned if he fell over now. Around him, chaos erupted in spectacular fashion. The Volantian cadet, who'd already been struggling, literally popped. The release of their internal gases created a flatulent sound effect that would have been hilarious under any other circumstance. Medical drones swarmed them immediately. Cora's support harness emitted a sound Marcus had only heard once before, when his uncle's tractor had died mid-harvest. Expensive machinery giving up its ghost. She went down hard, scales scraping against the metal floor, limbs splayed. "I yield," she gasped. "I formally yield. Get me out." Pip had stopped making sounds entirely, his small body pressed against the floor, eyes wide and glassy. A crystalline cadet shattered, just straight up shattered, their silicon-based structure unable to handle the stress. Medical drones rushed in, but Marcus caught a thumbs-up gesture from one of their many fractured pieces. Apparently they could regenerate. Good for them. And then the training field itself started to fail. The first sound was a deep, resonant groan that vibrated through Marcus's bones. The kind of sound that infrastructure makes when it's remembering it wasn't meant to do this. The cracks that had been merely concerning suddenly widened, spreading across the floor in branching lightning patterns. A support beam overhead bent visibly, metal screaming. The floor began to buckle, except for the section where Marcus stood. It took him a moment to notice, because he was concentrating very hard on not falling over, which required more focus than he'd care to admit. But once he did notice, it was impossible to ignore. The training field floor was fracturing, collapsing, buckling under the unprecedented gravitational stress. Metal plates designed to handle enormous forces were crumpling like aluminum foil. Entire sections were falling away, revealing the support structure beneath, which was also failing, also bending, also giving up under the impossible load. But in a perfect circle approximately 2 meters in diameter, centered exactly where Marcus Webb stood, the floor remained pristine. Stable. Completely unbothered. Marcus looked down, looked at the destruction spreading around him, looked at his feet. "Huh," he said. Cora, from her position in the expanding disaster zone, locked eyes with Marcus. Her face conveyed several emotions simultaneously, Pain, exhaustion, disbelief, and something that might have been the early stages of religious conversion. "You," she gasped, "have got to be kidding me." The floor section beneath her tilted 15 degrees. She began sliding toward a newly formed chasm. Without thinking, Marcus moved. 3 heavy steps, each one feeling like walking through concrete, and he grabbed her arm, hauled her back, dragged her into his bubble of inexplicable stability. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen," Cora wheezed, now safely in the zone where physics seemed slightly less angry. "This violates at least 4 laws of thermodynamics." "I don't think it violates thermodynamics," Marcus said, still standing because sitting down seemed like admitting defeat. "I think it's just weight distribution." "Weight distribution doesn't explain this." Pip had somehow found the energy to crawl. The small alien pulled himself across the disintegrating floor, claws scraping, making pitiful whimpering sounds. He reached the stable zone and collapsed at Marcus's feet, like he'd reached the promised land. "Safe," Pip whispered. "The human zone is safe." The observation gallery had gone from arguing to shouting to what sounded like full-scale panic. Marcus could see instructors running between control panels. Vrel's mandibles were clicking so fast they created a buzzing sound audible even through the reinforced glass. The intercom crackled with static, then Vrel's voice, stripped of all professional composure. "Emergency shutdown! Initiate emergency shutdown now!" Nothing happened. Well, nothing good happened. The gravity fluctuated wildly, spiking to what felt like 3.5 G before dropping to 2.8 G before settling somewhere around 3.2 G. Each fluctuation created new stress patterns in the collapsing infrastructure. More beams bent, more floor plates buckled. Marcus's stable zone remained perfectly fine. "Engineering to training field Gamma 9! A new voice over the intercom, high-pitched and bubbling. "Do not, I repeat, do not move the human." "Which human?" someone shouted back. "The only one still standing." Marcus raised his hand, even though he wasn't sure anyone could see him through the chaos. "That's me. I'm the standing human." 3 more cadets crawled into his safe zone, then 2 more. Then a larger cadet who really shouldn't have been able to move at all under this gravity, but was apparently motivated by the structural integrity of the floor beneath them turning into abstract art. Marcus found himself at the center of a growing cluster of aliens, all clinging to the only part of the training field that wasn't actively trying to kill them. "This is so stupid," Cora repeated, her earlier competitiveness replaced by exhausted acceptance. "You're just standing there." "I'm just standing here," Marcus confirmed. "The entire facility is failing around you." "Yep. And you're fine." "I mean, fine is a strong word. I'm definitely going to feel this tomorrow. My lower back is already filing complaints. I think I pulled something in my shoulder, and I'm pretty sure I'm sweating in places I didn't know could sweat." "But you're standing!" "I mean, yeah, what else would I be doing? Else would I be—" Commander Vrel's voice cut through, strained but regaining some composure. "All cadets, remain in your current positions. Engineering is en route. Webb, Marcus, human. You are ordered not to move under any circumstances. Do you understand?" "Sure," Marcus called back. "Can I sit down?" "No!" "Okay, but standing is going to get old pretty quick. I don't care if it gets old. I don't care if it gets ancient. You will stand exactly where you are until this facility is stabilized, or I will personally ensure your next assignment is cleaning waste reclamation systems on a Hygonian bioship. Those are the ships where everything is technically alive, right?" "Yes, including the walls, which secrete digestive enzymes. I'll keep standing." The floor continued its collapse inward, an inverse sinkhole forming around Marcus's position. It was almost beautiful in a terrifying way. The geometric patterns of failure, the mathematical precision with which the infrastructure was giving up, all radiating from his position like he was the eye of a hurricane. Pip had passed out, but was still breathing. Cora had given up on maintaining dignity and was simply lying on the stable floor, limbs akimbo. The other refugees in the safe zone were in various states of consciousness, but all were alive. And Marcus stood, because apparently that's what humans did. They stood when everything else fell. They endured when everything else failed. They became load-bearing pillars through sheer stupid stubbornness. From somewhere in the chaos, he heard the distinctive sound of credits changing hands. Someone in the observation gallery had apparently won a very unlikely bet. Marcus really hoped it was the janitor. The janitor always seemed like good people. Chief Engineer Rax arrived floating, which seemed like cheating. The Jellan moved through the air like a translucent balloon filled with opalescent thoughts, their tentacles trailing behind them in elegant spirals. They wore what Marcus assumed was protective gear, various instruments attached to their gelatinous body via some method that defied Marcus' understanding of solid-state physics. Fascinating, Rax burbled, their voice emanating from a translator device that made them sound like they were speaking through expensive audio equipment underwater. Absolutely fascinating. The structural integrity readings are impossible. Impossible bad or impossible good? Marcus asked. Yes. Rax floated closer, tentacles extending to wave various scanning devices around Marcus's position. The gravitational stress at this level should have collapsed this entire floor section 17 minutes ago. The support beams are rated for 2.5 G maximum sustained load. We are currently experiencing 3.2 G. And yet the human zone is fine, Cora finished from her position on the floor. She'd regained enough strength to be sarcastic, which Marcus took as a good sign. It's not just fine, Rax corrected, multiple tentacles manipulating holographic displays that appeared in midair. According to my readings, the structural stress in this 2-meter radius is actually lower than baseline, as if the human is somehow negating the excess gravitational force. I'm not doing anything, Marcus protested. That's what makes it so interesting. Rax drifted in a slow circle, scanning from every angle. Human biology, let me think. Your species evolved on a high-gravity world by galactic standards. 1G is, approximately 1.4 times the galactic average for inhabited worlds? Something like that. And your skeletal structure, I remember from xenobiology classes. Carbon-based calcium phosphate composite, incredibly dense. Your bones are rated at approximately 170 megapascals compressive strength. I don't know what that means, but sure. It means your bones are tougher than most construction materials, and your musculature, redundant systems, overlapping function groups, ridiculous oxygen efficiency. You're essentially a biological machine optimized for operating under high stress. My mom called it being built sturdy, Marcus offered. Your mother, Rax said with what might have been awe, raised a living architectural support column. More engineers arrived, though none as dramatic as Rax. They set up equipment, ran diagnostics, had heated discussions that Marcus couldn't follow about load dispersal coefficients and gravitational stress matrices and something called the Webb effect, which made him deeply uncomfortable. Here's the situation, Rax eventually announced, apparently having reached some conclusion. The emergency shutdown failed because the gravitational generators have locked in a feedback loop. We can't safely power them down from here without risking a catastrophic overload that could potentially damage the entire facility. How do we fix it? Vrel's voice over the intercom had moved past anger into professional crisis management mode. We don't. We wait. The generators will cycle down naturally over approximately 40 minutes, but during that time, the gravitational field must remain stable. Any additional stress could trigger a cascade failure. And, Vrel prompted, and that means nothing moves. Specifically, the human cannot move. He's currently acting as a load-bearing element. The pressure distribution from his stance is the only thing maintaining structural integrity in this section. If he moves, the remaining supports will fail immediately. The silence that followed was profound. Marcus broke it. So, you're telling me I need to stand here perfectly still for 40 minutes? Perfectly still is a relative term. Breathing is acceptable. Minor weight shifts are tolerable. But essentially, yes, you have become temporarily but critically structural. This is the stupidest thing that has ever happened in the history of military training, Cora announced, to no one in particular. I'm sure that's not true, Marcus said. Name something stupider. That time in 2156 when the Vrelian First Fleet accidentally invaded their own colony because of a navigation error. That's stupider, Cora conceded. Barely. Pip stirred, coming back to consciousness. Are we dead? No, but the human has to stand very still for a while, Cora explained. That's fine. Humans are good at standing still. They're persistence predators, remember? They can wait forever. I can't wait forever, Marcus said. I really need to use the bathroom. Rax's tentacles twitched in what might have been amusement. I recommend extreme concentration on other topics. The other cadets who'd taken refuge in the safe zone were gradually regaining consciousness and awareness. They arranged themselves in the most space-efficient manner possible, which meant everyone was essentially in a pile with Marcus at the center. I feel like a load-bearing pillar at a really weird party, Marcus observed. You are a load-bearing pillar at a really weird party, Cora shot back. From the observation gallery, Marcus could see the full audience now. The instructors, the medical staff, the engineering team, and what looked like Academy administration officials, who were probably already calculating the cost of repairs and the paperwork required to explain this. Commander Vrel's face appeared on a screen that lowered from the ceiling. Her mandibles were clicking in a slow, deliberate pattern that Marcus had learned meant she was thinking very hard about something she really didn't want to think about. Cadet Webb, she said formally. Commander, when this exercise concludes, we will need to discuss several things. Am I in trouble? I don't know. Can you be in trouble for being too structurally sound? Is that a thing that exists? As of today, apparently yes. Vrel's mandibles clicked faster. For the record, the betting pool has concluded. The facility janitor won 17,000 credits by betting on catastrophic field failure requiring human structural intervention. The janitor is a prophet, Marcus said solemnly. The janitor, Vrel corrected, has worked here for 40 years and has seen every possible training accident. Apparently this one was overdue. The minutes crawled by. But he stood, because the alternative was everyone dying, and that seemed like it would reflect poorly on his performance review. Tell me about Earth, Pip said suddenly, his voice small and seeking distraction. What about it? Why are you like this? Why can you do this? Marcus thought about it, about his home planet, about growing up in thin air and strong gravity, about summer jobs that built calluses and character in equal measure, about a species that looked at a hostile world and decided to thrive instead of merely survive. We're from a place that tried really hard to kill us, Marcus said finally, and we just didn't let it. I think that became part of our DNA eventually. Stubbornness, the refusal to fall down when everything says we should. That's not biology, Rax burbled. That's psychology. Maybe, Marcus agreed. But it's also why I'm still standing. The gravity generators hummed, counting down their cycle, and Marcus Webb stood in the ruins of a training field that had collapsed around him, holding his ground simply because that's what humans did. At the 15-minute mark, Marcus's left leg started doing a thing. Not quite cramping, not quite spasming, but definitely communicating its deep dissatisfaction with current management decisions. He breathed through it, shifting his weight by millimeters, the kind of micro-adjustment his wrestling coach had drilled into him during those endless sessions on maintaining base. Are you okay? Pip asked from his position wedged against Marcus's shin. Define okay. Are you dying? Not actively. Good enough. Not. At 20 minutes, Cora attempted to maintain some dignity by arranging herself into what might have been a formal resting position if she weren't essentially draped across Marcus's feet. When we tell this story later, she said, I'm leaving out the part where I was reduced to using a human as furniture. I'll leave out the part where you said humans were too weak for real military service, Marcus offered. Deal. At 25 minutes, more Academy officials arrived in the observation gallery. Marcus recognized Admiral Katesh, the Thorian who oversaw combat training divisions. The Admiral's crystalline face was unreadable, but their gesticulations suggested either deep concern or profound confusion. Possibly both. Vrel was explaining the situation, mandibles clicking rapidly. Every so often, Katesh would gesture at Marcus, and Vrel would shrug with her entire exoskeleton. Which was impressive, given that shrugging wasn't technically something her species could do. I think they're arguing about what to do with you, Cora observed. With me, I'm just standing here. You're just standing in a way that's apparently unprecedented in Academy history. You've broken either records or equipment, possibly both. The equipment broke itself, Marcus protested. The equipment broke because you refused to fall down like a sensible person. At 30 minutes, Pip fell asleep. Actual, genuine sleep, his small body rising and falling with steady breaths. Apparently having decided that if death was coming, he'd rather not be conscious for it. Marcus envied him. The other cadets in the safe zone had formed a sort of exhausted pile, various species arranged in the most comfortable configuration possible, given that they were all pressed against or near Marcus for stability. A silicate cadet had somehow ended up with one of their crystalline appendages resting on Marcus's shoulder. A Volantian, a different one, the first having been fully deflated and evacuated, had anchored themselves to Marcus's belt. "I'm collecting aliens," Marcus announced. "You're saving lives," Rax corrected, floating nearby with monitoring equipment. "There's a difference. It doesn't feel very heroic. The best heroism rarely does. It usually feels like stubbornness and sore muscles." At 33 minutes, Marcus started talking. Partly for distraction, partly because the silence was becoming oppressive, and partly because his brain needed something to do other than catalogue every single ache. "So Earth," he began, addressing the exhausted audience around his feet, "is what the galactic community calls a Class 4 death world. Which sounds dramatic, but it's pretty accurate. The atmospheric oxygen content is toxic to like 40% of species. The gravity is high. The weather systems are violent. We have these things called hurricanes that are basically angry spiral death clouds that can level cities." "Why would anyone live there?" Pip mumbled, not quite awake. "Because it's home, because humans evolved there, so to us it's just normal. We have predators that can outrun us, outclimb us, outswim us, and outfight us. So we evolved to be the species that just doesn't quit. We're not the fastest or the strongest, but we can outlast almost anything." "Persistence predators," Cora said, having apparently heard this before. "Right. Our ancestors would pick an animal and just follow it. For days if necessary. Walk after it until it collapsed from exhaustion. Then walk up and kill it. We're built for endurance, not sprints." "That's horrifying," someone said. "That's humanity," Marcus agreed. "We looked at a planet trying to kill us and said, 'Not today.' And then we said it again the next day and the next, for millions of years. It's basically our whole species identity. Not today, the species. Your planet also has plants that are poisonous, animals that are venomous, weather that kills, and diseases that—" Rax started listing. "Yeah, Earth's trying really hard," Marcus interrupted. "But we're still there, still thriving. We turned all those things, trying to kill us, into food, medicine, pets, and entertainment. We domesticated wolves into dogs. We eat things that are technically toxic in the right doses. We invented sports where we throw ourselves off mountains attached to fabric and hope physics works in our favor." "You're all insane," Cora concluded. "Maybe. But we're alive." At 38 minutes, the gravity generators began their final cycle down. The change was gradual, a slow reduction in the crushing force. 3.2 G became 3.1 G, then 3 G. The floor stopped groaning quite so urgently. "Almost there," Rax announced. "2 more minutes, Cadet Webb. You've done remarkably well." "My legs have done remarkably well," Marcus corrected. "I've mostly just been standing on top of them." "Your legs didn't decide to stand. You did. Give yourself some credit." At 39 minutes, Marcus caught movement in the observation gallery. The instructors were preparing for something. Medical drones positioned themselves at the ready. Someone was holding what looked like a camera, because apparently this needed to be documented. At 40 minutes exactly, the gravity generators shut down completely, and then his body remembered that it had just spent 40 minutes under extreme stress, serving as a structural support element, and every muscle simultaneously filed for immediate retirement. His knees buckled. He sat down hard, less a controlled descent and more a sudden friendship with the floor. Around him, the other cadets collapsed like dominoes, the removal of deadly gravity not making them any less exhausted. Pip immediately crawled into Marcus's lap and resumed sleeping. Cora lay flat on her back, scales rising and falling with deep breaths. "I'm never doing that again." "Same," Marcus agreed. "You saved my life, human." "You probably would have been fine." "The floor fell out from under me. I was literally sliding into a hole. I would have been extremely not fine. Cora turned her head to look at him. Thank you. Don't mention it. Seriously, I don't want this to become a thing. Too late, Rax chimed in cheerfully. This is absolutely a thing now, the web event, the standing incident. The day humanity became load-bearing, the name is still being workshopped. Medical teams descended, checking vitals, administering whatever passed for sports drinks among their species, helping cadets to actual medical facilities instead of the floor. Marcus waved off the medical drone that came for him. I'm fine, just sore. You were a structural support for 40 minutes, the medical drone's synthesized voice protested. You need examination. I need a sandwich and a nap. That's not protocol. Put it in my file. Human deviated from protocol by not dying. Recommend sandwich. The drone beeped in what might have been exasperation and moved on to more cooperative patience. Commander Vrel descended from the observation gallery, picking her way across the ruined training field. She stood before Marcus, who was still sitting because standing seemed overrated, and her mandibles clicked in a complex rhythm. Cadet Webb. Commander, you just survived an exercise that should have been impossible. You maintained structural integrity through sheer biological stubbornness. You saved the lives of multiple cadets. Her multifaceted eyes fixed on him. And you're eating a protein bar. Marcus looked down at his hands. He was, in fact, eating a protein bar. He didn't remember getting it out. Muscle memory, probably. Was that wrong? No, it's very human. Vrel's mandibles clicked in what Marcus had learned was amusement. Your species continues to surprise me. I may have underestimated your suitability for military service. Does this mean I pass? Cadet Webb, you've redefined the grading criteria. We're going to need to create new assessment categories just to process what happened here today. From somewhere in the observation gallery, someone shouted, The janitor won! 17,000 credits! He bet on catastrophic field failure! Vrel's mandibles clicked rapidly. Of course he did. He's seen everything else go wrong. Why not this? Marcus finished his protein bar and slowly, carefully stood up. His legs trembled, his back screamed, every joint filed formal complaints. But he stood, because that's what he did. Permission to be dismissed, Commander? Granted. Recommended you report to medical for evaluation. I'm going to sleep for a week. That's also acceptable. Vrel paused, mandibles stilling. For what it's worth, Webb, well done. Genuinely well done. Marcus nodded and headed for the exit, Pip still clinging to him like a furry backpack, too tired to walk. Behind him, engineering teams were already assessing the damage, and he heard someone mention that repairs would take months and cost a fortune. He'd probably be famous for this, or infamous, possibly both. The human who broke the training field by refusing to fall down. He could live with that. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in the Academy's main auditorium, wearing his dress uniform and trying very hard not to think about the fact that his legs still got weird twinges when the weather changed. Turns out, serving as an architectural support had long-term consequences. Who knew? The aftermath of the training field incident, official designation, Event TF Gamma 9 Web, had been predictably chaotic. There had been medical examinations, so many medical examinations. Teams of xenobiologists studying why human physiology apparently violated several assumed limitations. Engineering reviews analyzing how the human stance had distributed gravitational stress more efficiently than their systems. Insurance adjusters weeping openly while calculating repair costs. And incident reports. So many incident reports. Commander Vrel's official filing had included the phrase, "Cadet refused to fall down," no fewer than 17 times. Marcus had seen it because she'd made him proofread it, apparently deciding that if he was going to be the subject of historical documentation, he should at least ensure accuracy. The Academy brass had been divided on how to handle him. Half wanted to study him like an interesting biological phenomenon. The other half wanted to wrap him in protective foam and never let him near equipment again. A third, smaller faction had suggested human-specific training facilities rated for what they were now calling web-class stress tolerance. Nervous? Pip asked from beside him. The small alien had cleaned up nice, his fur groomed to glossy perfection, his dress uniform fitted with tiny medals that jingled when he moved. Should I be? They're giving us awards in front of the entire academy. Oh yeah, that's mildly terrifying. On Marcus's other side, Cora stood rigid with military precision, her scales polished to mirror brightness. She'd been uncharacteristically quiet all morning, which meant she was either deeply proud or planning to murder him later. With Cora, it was often hard to tell. The auditorium was packed. Multiple species, multiple classes, multiple years of cadets all gathered to witness the graduation ceremony for the survivors of Hell Week. Which was everyone, technically, because Marcus had turned the most brutal training exercise in Academy history into an impromptu rescue operation. Admiral Katesh took the podium, their crystalline form refracting light in prismatic patterns. We are here to recognize exceptional conduct during this cycle's final integration exercise. An exercise that did not proceed as planned. Polite laughter rippled through the audience. Due to unforeseen circumstances involving gravitational field instability and structural failure, the exercise became a genuine survival scenario. The cadets present demonstrated remarkable adaptability, courage, and... Gatesh paused, their translator struggling with the next word. Stubbornness. More laughter, less polite. I will now call forward cadets for commendation. Cadet Pip of Chitrik Prime, for demonstrating exceptional survival instincts under extreme stress. Pip's whiskers twitched with surprise. He walked forward, scurried forward, and received a medal that was nearly as large as his torso. The citation read, For Strategic Positioning and Survival Initiative. Marcus leaned over to Cora. That's a really fancy way of saying he hid behind me. It was a good strategy, Cora whispered back. Better than my plan, which was to win through sheer competitive spite. Cadet Cora of Saria, for maintaining operational awareness during crisis conditions and demonstrating leadership in evacuation coordination. Cora walked forward with perfect military bearing, accepted her medal with a crisp salute, and returned to formation. Her medal cited, Combat Leadership Under Duress. I mostly just yelled at people to get to your stupid safe zone, she muttered to Marcus. You made it sound official. That's leadership. More names were called, more medals distributed. The cadets who'd survived in Marcus's gravitational bubble each received commendations for various flavors of didn't die while everything exploded. Then Katesh's crystalline gaze fixed on Marcus. Cadet, Marcus Webb of Earth. Here it comes, Marcus thought, and walked forward. Cadet Webb's actions during the exercise were unprecedented. Katesh's translator seemed to be having difficulties again. Through a combination of physiological resilience, biomechanical efficiency, and what can only be described as exceptional stubbornness, Cadet Webb maintained structural integrity in a collapsing training field for 40 minutes, serving as a de facto load-bearing support while also coordinating the survival of multiple fellow cadets. The auditorium had gone very quiet. His refusal to yield to gravitational stress that should have been physiologically impossible to withstand directly resulted in 0 casualties during a catastrophic equipment failure. Therefore, it is my honor to present Cadet Webb with the Academy's Medal for Extraordinary Conduct, with the specific citation reading, Katesh paused for effect, for services rendered as temporary structural support. The auditorium erupted. Laughter, applause, the chittering, clicking, buzzing sounds of multiple species expressing approval. Someone in the back was chanting, load-bearing human, load-bearing human. Marcus accepted the medal, which was heavy and ornate and would look absolutely ridiculous to explain to his family. Thank you, Admiral. I just stood there? You stood there remarkably well. That will be all, Cadet. As Marcus returned to formation, Pip whispered, You're a legend now. You know that, right? I broke a training field. You survived breaking a training field. Big difference. Commander Vrel took the podium next. As a result of recent events, several changes will be implemented in Academy training protocols. First, all high-gravity exercises will now be conducted in reinforced facilities, rated for what we're calling extreme biological variance. Second, human cadets will undergo specialized assessment to determine individual stress tolerances. Third, she paused, mandibles clicking with something that might have been amusement. Third, we are formally requesting that the facility maintenance budget be tripled. The janitor has submitted a proposal citing 40 years of experience and a proven track record of predicting catastrophic training accidents. His insights have proven more valuable than our engineering projections. The janitor, sitting in the back row, raised a tentacle appendage limb in acknowledgement. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Horrible punch that tasted like someone had confused fruity with fuel additive. Little sandwiches that were technically edible. Awkward social mingling where Marcus got to explain for the 40th time that, no, Earth wasn't actively trying to kill humans. It just made us really hard to kill as a side effect. Cora cornered him near the refreshment table. So, we survived Hell Week. Technically, Hell Week survived us. Barely. Fair point. She picked up one of the sandwiches, examined it with professional skepticism, and put it back. I've been assigned to the Fast Attack Cruiser Determination. They wanted someone with experience in crisis management. You're going to be great at that. You? Research posting, apparently. They want to study human endurance in various gravity conditions. I'm either going to be very bored or very sore. Both, probably. Cora extended her hand in the human gesture of respect she'd learned. It's been an honor, Webb. Even if you are the most frustrating person I've ever met. You? Same to you. Marcus shook her hand. Try not to get into any situations where you need a load-bearing human. Try not to become a load-bearing human again. No promises. Pip appeared, having somehow acquired 3 plates of food despite his small size. Are we doing heartfelt goodbyes? I want in on this. We're acknowledging mutual survival, Cora corrected. Same thing. Pip set down his food and threw his small arms around Marcus's leg in what was probably meant to be a hug. Thanks for not letting me die. Thanks for keeping me company while I stood there. Are we going to stay in touch? We should stay in touch. I'm going to send you messages. So many messages. You'll be sick of messages. I look forward to it. Later, much later, after the reception had wound down and the other cadets had dispersed to their new assignments, Marcus found himself back at Training Field Gamma 9, or what was left of it. The repairs were ongoing. The massive crater where the floor had collapsed had been filled with fresh materials, reinforced with supports rated for gravitational stresses that should be impossible for biological entities to generate. The observation gallery was being rebuilt. The whole thing would take months, but there, in the exact center, they'd left a small section of the original floor. The 2-meter circle where Marcus had stood, preserved behind a protective barrier with a plaque that read, "Here stood Cadet Marcus Webb, human Earth who refused to fall when everything else did." A reminder that sometimes the strongest foundation isn't the ground beneath us, but the will to stand upon it. Marcus read it twice, then shook his head. That's incredibly cheesy. It's tradition, Commander Vrel said, appearing from behind a support beam. She'd apparently had the same idea about visiting the site. Every major training incident gets commemorated. Yours just happens to be more literal than most. I really just stood there. You stood there when trained military infrastructure couldn't. Do you understand how absurd that is? How impossible? We designed training fields to handle forces that could kill most species. And you, a single biological organism from a planet we'd never heard of 6 years ago, outlasted all of it. Earth builds things sturdy. Earth builds things terrifying, Vrel corrected, and then sends them to the stars. Her mandibles clicked in a pattern Marcus had learned meant thoughtful consideration. You asked during the exercise when the real training would start. I remember. This was the real training, not the gravity, not the exercise. The training was learning that sometimes survival isn't about strength or speed or firepower. Sometimes it's about refusing to quit when every rational measure says you should. That's what we need in officers. That's what humanity brings to the galactic community. She turned to leave, then paused. Also, for the record, in all my years of service, I've never had to write a report that included the phrase, "Cadet became load-bearing." You've made history, Webb. Arguably stupid history, but history nonetheless. Marcus watched her go, then looked back at the preserved floor section, his floor section. The spot where he'd stood because standing was what you did, because falling was giving up, because sometimes being too stubborn to quit was exactly the same thing as being strong enough to endure. His communicator buzzed. A message from Pip. Already missed the human. When you visit, bring protein bars. Ours taste wrong. Then Cora. Determination departs next week. Try not to break anything while I'm gone. Then his mother, because of course she'd heard about the incident through some mysterious mom network that transcended interstellar space. Heard you did well at training. Very proud. Also heard you nearly got crushed. Please be more careful. Love you. Marcus smiled, turned away from the memorial, and headed for his quarters. Tomorrow he'd start his new assignment. Tomorrow he'd be poked and prodded and studied as an interesting biological anomaly. Tomorrow he'd begin the process of proving that humanity's place in the stars wasn't a fluke or an accident, but earned through the same stubborn refusal to quit that had kept them alive on Earth for millions of years. But tonight he was just Marcus Webb, recent graduate of the Galactic Military Academy, recipient of possibly the most embarrassing commendation in military history, and the human who'd broken a training field by standing on it. He could live with that. In fact, he probably would for the rest of his life, because the universe had learned something that day. Humans were a lot of things, weird, fragile-looking, prone to inappropriate humor in crisis situations, but they were also, fundamentally, impossible to push over. And sometimes, that made all the difference.